Sunday.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. On the M6 northbound in Warwickshire, a road traffic collision causes delays of up to 2 hours. 2 lanes are closed while authorities address the situation. On the M4 westbound, due to planned maintenance from 8 this evening, diversions are in place, and the road is closed between junctions 37 and 38. On the M62 eastbound at junction 30 in Leeds, a collision has closed 2 lanes, leading to a 20-minute delay. And on the trains, Greater Anglia services are disrupted between Cheshunt and Broxbourne, and London Overground services face interruptions between Gospel Oak and Stratford. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
It's the final week to see how you could be our biggest winner yet, touring in this stylish Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. This brand new 2025 model comes complete with kitchen and bathroom areas and enough space to comfortably sleep a family of 4. We'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to add a few of your favourite things. Don't miss out as lines close on the 6th of June. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dewbberry, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there and happy Friday to you. It's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry and this is Dewbs Co. Coming up tonight, the Attorney General, Lord Hermer, has had to issue an apology after basically suggesting that people who wish to leave the ECHR are somehow similar to Nazis. I mean, what do we even say to this, ladies and gents? Let's take a look at it all. And some lessons about the importance of the armed forces to be built into the school curriculum. That would be a proposal to help boost recruitment. What would you think to that? And Nigel Farage has unveiled what he calls a crypto revolution. You can donate to reform with Bitcoin and taxes on profits made by those investments would be lower. So do you think this is a smart move or not? I'll tell you what it is, quite similar to some of the things that they're doing over in America. A Reform UK is basically copying Donald Trump, and speaking of Donald Trump, him and Musk have got a few things to say tonight, and I might have a little peek at that. We've got lots to get stuck into, and look who's keeping me company to do just that. I've got the pollster and the academic Matt Goodwin and the political commentator Jonathan Liss. But before we get stuck in, let's cross live and give you your 6 o'clock news headlines.
Michelle, thank you very much and good evening. The top stories. Paul Doyle has appeared in court today accused of driving his car into a crowd of people after Liverpool FC's trophy parade. The 53-year-old faces 7 charges, including wounding with intent, causing grievous bodily harm with intent and dangerous driving. The charges relate to 6 victims, including 2 children aged 11 and 17, after a total of 79 people were injured in the city centre on Monday evening. Mr Doyle spoke only to confirm his name and date of birth during the hearing today, before he was remanded into custody ahead of a plea hearing on the 14th of August. Judge Menery set a provisional trial date for the 24th of November. In other news, comedian and actor Russell Brand has pleaded not guilty at Southwark Crown Court today to charges of rape and sexual assault. The 49-year-old is charged with 1 count of rape, 1 count of indecent assault, 1 count of oral rape and 2 counts of sexual assault in connection with incidents involving 4 separate women between 1999 and 2005. Mr Brand pleaded not guilty to all counts. The actor was charged following an investigation by Channel 4 and the Sunday Times in which several women made allegations against him, which he denied at the time. Russell Brand has previously said he's never engaged in non-consensual activity. Elsewhere, the government has sold its remaining shares in NatWest and confirmed a £10.5 billion loss to taxpayers since the bank was rescued during the 2008 financial crisis. It means NatWest, which was previously called RBS, has returned to private ownership for the first time since it was bailed out. The Treasury has been a stakeholder since the bank received almost £46 billion of funding in 2008 and 2009. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has said today that bosses at NatWest say it's a significant moment and thanked taxpayers for rescuing it 17 years ago. The Attorney-General regrets remarks in which he compared calls for the UK to leave international courts with 1930s Germany. In a statement, Lord Hermer's spokesman said the peer acknowledged his choice of words was clumsy, but rejected the characterisation of his speech by the Conservatives. Lord Hermer has faced criticism for a speech yesterday in which he criticised politicians who argued that Britain abandons the constraints of international law in favour of raw power. Number 10 has told GBNews that Sir Keir Starmer has confidence in his Attorney-General following the row.
Approach is a rejection of the siren song that can sadly now be heard in the Palace of Westminster and in some sections of the media, that Britain must abandon the constraints of international law in favour of raw power. Now, this is not a new song. The claim that international law is fine as far as it goes, but can be put aside when conditions change, is a claim that was made in the early 1930s by realist jurists in Germany, most notably Carl Schmitt, whose central thesis was, in essence, the claim that state power is all that counts, not law.
Former Sinn Féin leader Gerry Adams has been awarded €100,000 in damages after winning his libel action against the BBC. Mr Adams said a BBC Spotlight programme and an accompanying online story defamed him by alleging he sanctioned the killing of former Sinn Féin official Dennis Donaldson, for which he denies any involvement. He said taking the case was about putting manners on the BBC. Wyn Evans says he's been dropped by the BBC following his apology for using inappropriate language during the launch of the Strictly Come Dancing tour in December. The Welsh opera singer will no longer be a BBC Radio Wales presenter, he announced today. He posted on Instagram saying, "It breaks my heart to say the BBC has decided not to renew my contract." 52-year-old Evans was recorded making a sexualised remark at the Birmingham Arena as the group prepared for a photo on stage. In a statement, he said, "My language was inappropriate and unacceptable, for which I sincerely apologise." And finally, the NHS is set to roll out new blood tests for cancer patients that scientists say could be revolutionary in personalising treatment. The liquid biopsy test will be offered to thousands of people who are suffering from lung cancer and breast cancer. Those are the latest headlines for now. More news in an hour.
Thank you very much for that, and a happy Friday to each and every single one of you. How are you tonight? I hope that you are well. I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs Co with you until 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, I've got my panel, pollster, academic, and I've got to say, State of the Nation presenter on GB News at 8 o'clock tonight.
8 p.m. tonight. Be there or be square.
There you go. Matt Goodwin alongside him. Returning face. I've not seen you for quite some time.
Yeah.
Jonathan Liss. I'm delighted to announce that he's dressed quite sensibly tonight, which I feel sometimes is a little bit rare.
You said you were disappointed a minute ago.
I know, but then I reflected on it and I thought, actually, you've dressed up for the occasion, so I'm pleased about that.
It's so rare that we get to see each other, Michelle. I had to bring my best.
Well, actually, I don't mind a little bit of quirk. It makes things interesting. What are you going to pipe up?
No, I'm going to hold my breath until we get into the debate.
Oh, I thought he was going to pipe up something there, desperate to say something about fashion. Anyway, look, each and every single one of you are also very welcome tonight. What's on your mind? Join the conversation in all the usual ways. You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. You can go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay, or, of course, you can tweet or you can X me. There is a lot we need to discuss tonight, ladies and gents. Did you see that crypto revolution, that Nigel Farage announced last night? What did you make to that? Is it a step in the right direction or not? Also, as well, young kids, should they be learning more about the military in order to encourage them to get into the army or such like? What's your thoughts on that? But first of all, what is going on in society? When has all of this kind of become a thing? That if you've got a political opponent, so someone that you disagree with, which is absolutely fine in a democracy, all views welcome and all that, but what happened? What triggered? What changed? I don't know, because it doesn't feel like it always used to happen. It feels like it's a relatively recent thing, and what I'm describing is people basically suggesting that their political opponents are somehow akin to Nazis. Seems to happen left, right and centre now. It's almost becoming boring because it's happening that often. But today's latest example of it, someone very senior, the Attorney General, Lord Hermer, he's had to express regret. His choice of words, let's listen then, shall we, to his choice of words.
Is a rejection of the siren song that can sadly now be heard in the Palace of Westminster and in some sections of the media, that Britain must abandon the constraints of international law in favour of raw power. Now, this is not a new song. The claim that international law is fine as far as it goes, but can be put aside when conditions change, is a claim that was made in the early 1930s by realist jurists in Germany, most notably Carl Schmitt, whose central thesis was, in essence, the claim that state power is all that counts, not law.
He subsequently gone on to say, basically, that he regrets the clumsy choice of words. They were not clumsy chosen words. They were prepared, scripted, deliberately chosen words. What do you make to this, Matt Goodwin?
Well, they were deliberately chosen. Carl Schmitt was notorious for being aligned to the German Nazis, so the Attorney General knew exactly what he was doing, much like David Lammy knew what he was doing when he compared the pro-Brexit ERG group to Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. What we've seen this week, both with this statement and Keir Starmer's speech in Northern England attacking Nigel Farage, is the beginning of Project Fear 2.0, a view that if you vote for Farage and reform, you are voting for the apocalypse. You are voting for the return of Nazism, economic collapse, doom and gloom. And this is essentially all the left have now. They don't have a response to the legitimate concerns people have. Well, why can't we control our borders so long as we're in the ECHR? Why can't we deport foreign nationals so long as we're in the ECHR? They don't have answers to this. All they have is, well, you're a Nazi if you disagree. The roof is going to cave in. We're going to have, World War III. That was the argument before the vote for Brexit. And now we have this hysteria. I think the elite class, as represented by the Attorney General, have lost the plot. I think everybody watching this will know that they've lost the plot.
Do you guys at home get called Nazis? Has it ever happened to you? Honestly, you might laugh, Jonathan. Have you ever been called a Nazi?
No.
I get called it. I lose count how many times people on social media sling that accusation at me, fascist, Nazi, because of I performed the horrendous crime of wishing to have controlled borders.
Well, I think that's... I don't know exactly what you've been saying, but I presume you haven't said anything that would merit that attack. It's an incredibly it's a very dangerous thing to call someone. If you call someone a Nazi, obviously the Nazis are responsible for one of the great single most horrendous atrocities in modern history, or indeed any history. So it cheapens that immensely when you use it when it's not justified. He didn't say that Farage was a Nazi, and he didn't say that.
No, he's way too clever for that. He's not going to write in the script Nigel Farage is a Nazi.
He didn't say the people who want to leave the ECHR are Nazis either. What he was saying, and I agree that it was a clumsy phrase, but what he was pointing out was that there is a very good reason why the international community built organisations and institutions after the Second World War. And that is because we need to have some kind of shared framework for dealing with shared problems. So that's why we have United Nations, for example. We know, obviously, the League of Nations was a terrible failure before the Second World War. It helped to create the Second World War and cause the Second World War. So we need strong institutions where, yes, you do indeed pool some sovereignty to address the challenges we have. That's why we have something called international law.
Jonathan, can I ask you a question? Do you think New Zealand is a Nazi state? Canada, Australia, they're all Anglo nations that are not in the ECHR.
Matt, you're desperate. I know that you're desperate to have an argument with me.
No, I'm saying they're not in the ECHR.
Well, clearly, they are. I mean, I don't even need to dignify that question with a response. I'm not saying that if you want to leave the ECHR, you are a Nazi either. I thought I'd made that quite clear in my remarks.
What you're saying is that if we reject the multilateral rule, multilateral world order, international rules and conventions, and this is what the Attorney General was saying, we are somehow, at least let's agree, he said you're equivalent to 1930s Germany, where people prioritise state power over international laws, right? That's essentially what he said. Now, there are lots of countries around the world today. Iceland rejecting international laws on fishing.
Iceland's in the ECHR.
But has rejected the ICJ ruling on fishing. European countries saying they want to modify the ECHR. New Zealand, Canada not being in the ECHR. And the narrative you get from the left all the time is, well, Winston Churchill created this, therefore what's your problem with it? When the ECHR was established, it was an entirely different body of text from what it is now today. And this is what the Attorney General, Keir Starmer, and other international lawyers they're not being honest with people about that. It's morphed into an activist, politicised, biased international convention that stops us from controlling our borders.
The fundamental principle of it is unchanged from the last 75 years.
No,
but it is
not true.
It's fundamentally designed to sort of embed a set of rights and principles that all signatory states abide by, and we know that only 2 states have ever left the ECHR. Belarus and Russia.
And there are many more that are not in the ECHR.
Which are not we're not, I would argue, examples that we should be following. It does not follow, and I know you're desperate for me to say that you're a Nazi.
No, I think you're gaslighting a lot of people.
Well, so I can't win then. If I say that you're a Nazi, I'm
not
the wrong. If I say you're
desperate
not,
for you to say I'm a Nazi. Where's that come from?
I'm not saying you're desperate. I'm saying Matt.
Oh, right.
I don't believe that if you want to leave the ECHR, you're a Nazi. I believe that you're wrong, and we can have that discussion. So I thought I'm making my... How am I gaslighting?
What we've seen... Let me
gaslighting?
clarify, because what you're saying is the only 2 countries that have left the ECHR are Belarus and Russia. Right, but what you should be saying, if you were being accurate with people watching, is you should say the only 2 countries that have left are Russia and Belarus, but many other countries around the world have not joined the ECHR.
They're not in Europe.
There are lots of countries outside of Europe who are part and subscribe to the ECHR.
Well,
so anyway, but that being said,
the ECHR, there's a rubric for who is allowed to join. I think you have to be in the sort of the certain partnership countries, and pretty much everyone who could be in it is in it.
What we've seen with the Attorney General's comments is the same that we saw with people saying Trump voters were deplorables, Brexit voters were gammons, pro-Brexit voices in the House of Commons were equivalent to the Nazis, UKIP voters were cranks and loonies and racists, according to David Cameron. And what Starmer and Hermer don't understand is this is going to add to people's anger and frustration with an elite class in Westminster that is not listening to the mood in the country. And what people out there are saying is, do whatever you need to do to stop the boats and control our borders.
Matt, this is so silly. It's completely legitimate to point out the genesis of international law, which was the colossal failure of international institutions and law that culminated in the Second World War and the horrors. And after that, which you will freely admit, you just have admitted, people like Winston Churchill came together with his European colleagues to set up a convention on human rights and a court which was there to adjudicate on human rights disputes. Now, that is just a fact, and that it came out of the ashes of the Second World War. Now, I agree that it might have changed
since then, hasn't it, monumentally?
As I just said, it might have changed. It's legitimate to argue that we should try and change a relationship or that we should leave altogether. I would never agree with that, but it's completely legitimate to argue with it. I would never call you a Nazi.
OK, so if you won't leave it, how do you solve... You would accept, then, if you do not leave the ECHR, you cannot solve the small boat crisis.
I don't believe that's true, by the way. And can I also just point out this conversation is quite interesting because we hear so often about snowflakery on the left, about how people on the left are always getting offended by the slightest thing. I think that you're just demonstrating the exact same thing on the other side. That someone makes a comment, which is historical, that this court, this institution, was born out of the ashes of the Second World War, and to point out that it was a Nazi who said that sort of state power was all that counted, not international law. Again, just a fact. And you're saying, oh, he was saying that we're all Nazis. We're not Nazis.
No, that's not what I'm objecting to. He could have chosen any political philosopher to make that point. He didn't need to choose Carl Schmitt. That's number one. Everyone knows Carl Schmitt was aligned with Hitler and the Nazis. Point two, he has not mentioned in his lecture that many states since the Second World War have chosen not to participate in international law. In the mind of the Attorney General, like in the mind of Keir Starmer, in the mind of these people on the left, if you question international law and convention, you are somehow comparable. Well, don't forget, sorry, Jonathan, it was only a few months ago that Keir Starmer was running up and down this country saying that if anybody questioned his government's policies on migration and the borders, they were somehow equivalent to the far right.
No. That's all. Again, why can't you just critique people based on what they say?
That is literally what he said. Followed by, if you care about the rape gangs in this country, you are participating in a far-right narrative.
Say that. He did not say that anyone who was concerned about migration or anything like that was far-right. He was saying accurately that the far-right was jumping on a bandwagon after Southport, which they obviously did, and the people were following it.
Which the police have since concluded was not the case. I'm sure you've read the latest police report into the Southport riots and protests, and what does it conclude? There was no organised far-right presence in the riots or the protests. I'm sure you've read that.
Well, the riots were a result of far-right misinformation.
No, I'm sorry.
Well, it was clearly it was misinformation because it wasn't a failed asylum.
So this is a problem in politics today. You get a lot of people who aren't even reading the research and the evidence. The police report has...
People were not rioting because there was a young black British man who'd done this. That was not the reason they were doing it.
They were being whipped up by the far right. Do I believe Jonathan Liss or do I believe a report by the police Federation?
There was misinformation on the internet.
Created partly by Keir Starmer.
Well, that's a separate argument. There was misinformation on the internet about the identity of the culprit. This is something that, I mean, surely you're not disputing that.
Jonathan, you're painting
There was misinformation everywhere, and I can also remember a lot of misinformation, actually, that was also taking place at the time of this civil unrest, which was suggesting that white British men were acid attacking Muslim women. I remember that taking place at the time, and those suggestions were driving, I would argue, was driving a lot of young Muslim men to the streets to try and hunt out people to retaliate against. I also realised, though, no action was taken against the people that were suggesting and making up those false rumours on social media. Anyway, look, what do you make to it all? Lots that we need to discuss. I'll bring you into the conversation, worry not, because I can hear you shouting at your screens. I've got to say, as I've already said to you, Lord Hermer basically defended his speech. He said that he used clumsy language, and I also have to say as well, he rejects the way that he says the Tories are characterising his speech, and Keir Starmer apparently still has full confidence in the Attorney General. There you go. Make of it all what you will. There's a lot that we need to discuss, not least crypto revolution. Is that the right move? And also, should we be teaching children more about the value of the military in British schools?
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here.
I'm Michelle Dewberry. Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Are these two things linked? Is an excess of belly fat perhaps hindering our children's education?
Good morning. So you're quite right. It's not the actual belly fat that is causing the brain problem. It's more that what causes the belly fat to exist is also causing issues in the brain, essentially. So the belly fat is almost a side effect, and so is the reduced learning, the memory, the mood issues that we're seeing in the brain. So it's very important to understand that those two things are correlated, and actually the problems that go behind it are what we need to target. So it's not just about, we're not just trying to body shame young people, we're actually trying to look at what are the cofactors, essentially. So that could be sleep, lack of exercise, overuse of technology, loneliness, would you believe it? And of course, diet.
The headline essentially has run away with itself. It's conflating the two and making it sound like belly fat is an issue for our children's education, when in reality, it's a matter of actually we need to be encouraging healthier habits, a better diet, more sleep, as you mentioned, loneliness, for example. Is it healthy, though, for these headlines to suggest, like you said, potential for body shaming, potential for, parents getting the wrong impression? Is that what the real issue here is?
I mean, everything has a positive and a negative side. If any parent looks at this and thinks, oh my gosh, I'm seeing my child is getting a little bit podgier around the middle, I need to do something, and kicks them into action. And same with children, it's not a bad idea to inform them and educate them about diet and exercise, and it's good to know about those things.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain, we like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Sarah says, Michelle, it seems to be a standard Labour tactic to call everyone far-right or Nazi or things like that. You say it gives you an indication that the Labour Party are essentially panicking about Reform UK. We discussed at length, actually, Matt Goodwin, Jonathan Liss alongside me, we discussed at length last night the speech that Keir Starmer did, referencing Nigel Farage about 16 times, I think it was. What did you think to that?
I think, again, it's an example of Project Fear 2.0, but I think more fundamentally...
So have you
trademarked that?
Can I finish?
Go on.
Can I finish?
Go on.
So what Keir Starmer... And I'd be interested in Jonathan's views, because what I think Keir Starmer has done, intentionally or not, is in 24 hours he's turned Nigel Farage into the leader of the opposition. He's essentially said, you're the guy I'm worried about, not Kemi Badenoch, not the Tories. You are the main threat to the Labour Party.
He's right.
And he's done it in a very apocalyptic, hysterical tone that Nigel Farage is going to, crash the economy and you cannot trust him with your jobs and your money. But what struck me was, firstly, Keir Starmer didn't need to do that at this point in the election cycle. And secondly, many of the arguments that they're rolling out against Nigel Farage and reform aren't very convincing. I mean, we're supposed to trust Keir Starmer with the economy, the guy who said he wouldn't put taxes up, he wouldn't put spending up. He's done both of those things. The guy who didn't tell people he was going to sell off the Chagos Islands for 30 billion and British taxpayers are going to have to pay that. The guy who didn't say he was going to sell off fishing rights for 12 years, who didn't say he was going to give tax exemptions to Indian workers that wouldn't be made available to British workers. I just don't think the argument that Keir Starmer is rolling out against Nigel Farage and reform is very strong, because fundamentally we know that the reason people are voting reform is they don't just want to reject the Labour Party, Michelle. They want to reject everybody in Westminster. Mass uncontrolled immigration, broken borders, London-centric economy, two-tier policing, a politics that puts minorities above the hard-working, law-abiding British majority. I don't think Starmer's figured out the intensity of frustration in this country with that consensus in Westminster.
Jonathan Lewis?
Well, look, I think that people are absolutely frustrated, but that frustration didn't just start in the last few months. People were very frustrated a year ago as well. It's only 10 months ago that Labour won that landslide majority, and people were not voting for reform en masse then, and there is no sort of divine law that means they will rush to reform at the next election either. Clearly, the polls at the moment suggest that reform is doing very well. That is absolutely undeniable. And Labour is very, very worried about it. So the reason, I suppose, that Starmer is coming out now, out of the blocks, is to try and nip it in the bud, or to use an unhappy phrase from an earlier time, to shoot the UKIP fox. If Politico's remember what that was all about, that was when David Cameron saw that UKIP was doing quite well in the polls and decided to give a little speech to Bloomberg in which he said that we might have a referendum on leaving the EU. I'm hoping that would stop UKIP in its tracks, and clearly that didn't happen that way.
Can I ask you a question? Just be real with me for a minute. Let's put aside our, we like a debate, but just be real and honest with me for a minute. Imagine you're advising Keir Starmer. How do you stop reform?
Heaven forbid.
I'd say two things. Do whatever you can to stop the boats, and lower legal immigration. End the mass immigration experiment. So here's a revolutionary idea. I want you to answer, please. Why does Keir Starmer not actually give these voters
you've given me a few questions. Let me answer the first one about what I would do if I were advising Keir Starmer. Clearly, as someone who's on the left of Keir Starmer, I'd be advising Starmer to play to Labour's strengths, not to play a game entirely on Farage's football pitch. Well, the left strengths, popular left-wing policies.
Talking about everything other than immigration.
No, I think that, look, immigration is obviously a very important topic.
It's the number one issue in the country.
Can you just let me speak, please?
All right.
Immigration is an important topic for a lot of people, absolutely no doubt. But you are never going to be able to win an argument with Farage on Farage's number one topic. So what I would be advising Starmer to do is not to ignore immigration, but to play to the left strengths by implementing policies that are actually quite popular with people and are also solid social democratic policies, such as obviously improving the NHS, which is, I think, obviously one of the most important things. And if you improve the NHS, if you sort of cut those waiting times, waiting lists, etc., I think that you will see movements in the polls as well. Things that people can see in their day-to-day lives. That means crime as well, cutting crime. There has to be a huge investment in that, and the police forces, etc. I'm just telling you what you asked me a question I do, and I'm telling
Labour
you.
Have gone soft on
Also, those solid social democratic soft-left policies, such as renationalising not only the railways but also major utilities, sort of water, energy, etc., which poll very well in isolation.
Just briefly, can I just say, we have a group of people in this country, millions of people, who I call the alarm clock class, people who have to get up early in the morning, go to work hard, pay taxes, and they expect everybody else in society to do the same, to play by the rules. They don't want illegal migrants breaking our laws and then forcing British taxpayers to pay for the cost. And they don't want nearly 10 million people sitting on welfare rather than going to work. The alarm clock class are the people who keep Britain going. And what I would suggest to you is, Nigel Farage might have gone to a better or more private school than Keir Starmer. He might have gone into the city and been a trader, and all these silly little attacks that we saw Keir Starmer rolling out. But here's the awkward thing for Keir Starmer. Here's the awkward thing for Keir Starmer. Despite all of that, he's more popular in the Red Wall, as we saw in polling this week. Nigel Farage is more popular among the alarm clock class than Keir Starmer.
Boris Johnson one day was popular with a lot of working people as well.
But what I'm saying, Jonathan, is the Labour Party no longer can speak the language and understand the values and the opinions of ordinary people in this class.
That's a slightly different issue, because that's something that's happening across the centre-left around Europe, is that they are losing their core demographic. You see this with Democrats in America, you see this with parties all over Europe. They are losing their core demographic with traditional working-class communities, if you want to call it that, and they are gaining their sort of demographics in more educated university sort of graduates, bigger towns and cities. 40s, etc., the people that used to vote for the centre-right party. So that's a big demographic.
But why have they lost the workers?
Political shift. But what you can have, as we saw just 10 months ago, is coalitions can still form. I think that politicos like you and me are always very keen to sort of develop grand narratives about things that are happening, but really none of us knows what's going to be happening next week, let alone in 4 years.
Hang on a second.
Hang
on, sorry. No. I predicted all of this for the last 15 years. I said we'd vote for Brexit.
You predicted the 2024 election?
I said Reform we're going to replace the Tories. This is the post-Brexit realignment that the Tories squandered.
In 2019, no one thought. We thought the political realignment was done for a generation in 2019, but it wasn't. It was 4 years.
The big problem for the Labour Party, let's be honest, is the reason Keir Starmer ran up to Northern England this week is because he knows what you know and what I know, which is on current polling, Nigel Farage is going to do best in Labour-held seats across the Red Wall, Northern England and Wales next year. And what has terrified Keir Starmer and his aides is they've looked at the same numbers we're looking at and they've realised they're not going to have an electorate left by the time we get to 2028, 2029. Because Farage is speaking to them about the issues you refuse to speak about, immigration, two-tier policing,
I talk about them on this channel 3 times a week. I'm not refusing to talk about anything, for heaven's sake. What I'm saying is that, obviously, Labour has to think about not only Reform voters. Reform voters are very important. They are not the only people in the country. And what is the risk is, actually, that Labour goes over to the right and actually alienates its core base on that left, who then go elsewhere as well. That's the risk for Labour.
What do you make to it all? Get in touch and join the conversation. Coming up at 9 o'clock tonight, we've got Patrick Christie's tonight. He's alongside me. Patrick, what have you got for us?
Well, thank you very much for squeezing me onto your show, Michelle. I'll keep it brief. Right up and down the country, migrant camps are popping up. Our viewers and listeners tell them about them all the time. I went to one earlier today on one of the most expensive roads in London, Park Lane. Here it is.
You police?
I just want to know what's going
you police?
I'm not.
You
the police.
cancel?
No.
What they come in you the video?
Okay, so we have a free. We have a free.
Me no accept.
Well, I'll tell you why. Because some people have given us reports that there's a bit of trouble here. Yes, well, we had quite the interaction there. That's obviously just a little snippet of it, but it did ultimately culminate in this. Hello. Who wants to leave the ECHR is the far-right fascist. I hope that was water. Anyway, all of that and much more at 9 p.m. for my live studio audience show, Michelle.
Well, there you go, Patrick. That's your weekly shower hat, isn't it? You can give yourself a bit more spare time now to do other things, can't you? Anyway, we shall see you at 9 o'clock, Patrick. But, guys, don't go anywhere. We've got a lot coming up on this programme, including Bitcoin, the military and more. I'll see you in 2.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Blistering heat in parts of Spain. Temperatures could top out over the next few days in southern Spain over 40 Celsius. That heat building and providing some thundery showers in Iberia and southern France into the weekend. A few showers also likely over the Greek islands and Turkey on Saturday. Plenty of warm, sunny weather for Italy and Croatia. Sunny skies too for Spain and Portugal as the heat builds here. And lots of fine weather across the Canaries, where temperatures will continue to rise into next week. And we could get close to 30 degrees in Rome.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. The weekend promises a mixed picture. Plenty of showers across northern and western parts and some gusty winds, but fine weather for much of East Anglia and southeast England. Will be turning fresher for all of us behind this cold front, but it's still way out in the Atlantic at this stage. Ahead of it today, we've seen 1 or 2 heavy showers, particularly over northeast Scotland, but they're now fading away. And for many, it's a fine evening out there, staying dry for many overnight, turning quite misty and murky around the coasts of South Wales and southwest England, with a few showers creeping into West Wales and western Scotland later on. Pretty mild, it's pretty humid, temperatures holding up in the teens for many in towns and cities. On to Saturday, and as I said, a mixed picture. Much of eastern England starting fine and dry, but we will see some showers coming into Scotland. Generally here a dry start to the day, and it will be quite a mild start as well. But the rain is gathering, and that will be pushing its way into the west of Northern Ireland fairly smartly through the morning. We'll see some showery rain also arriving in West Wales, and as I said, quite murky around the coasts of Wales and southwest England. But warm and humid across these eastern parts of England. Hazy sunshine here lasting for most of the day. A few showers moving north across maybe the Lake District into southern Scotland, and then this band of wet weather will move across Northern Ireland around the middle part of the day and turn things quite wet and quite windy in western Scotland. Some heavy downpours, even the odd rumble of thunder, and some showers ahead of it too across parts of eastern Scotland and northeast England. A warm, humid feel for many. We could get temperatures into the mid-20s across the eastern areas, but Sunday's much fresher. Cooler, less humid air moving in. Again, much of the south and east dry and bright with sunny spells. Showers further north and west with lots of showers coming into western Scotland. And look at those temperatures. We could get to 26, 27 tomorrow by Sunday, highs in the low 20s and for many mid to high teens.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hello everybody, happy Friday to you. I've got Polestar academic and GB News presenter Matt Goodwin alongside me and the political commentator Jonathan Liss. One of my viewers has said, Jonathan sums up why Labour are getting disconnected from the electorate. What do you think? What do you think to that?
I don't speak for anyone apart from myself, Michelle, so I don't know. That the Labour was certainly not. The Labour Party, the current leadership of the Labour Party would not adopt me as one of their own, I suspect. I'm too much to the left of them.
Ray says, Michelle, why do so many people keep talking about who went to school where? Who cares? I'm not interested in people's schooling. I'm interested in how they're going to make our lives better going forward.
I think that's fine, by the way. I think that it's an issue if you purport to be a man of the people who understands ordinary working people's concerns, that you have had lives like they've had, then that becomes an issue. No one can help where they're from, absolutely.
Hang on a second. I've known Nigel Farage a long time. He spends a lot more time around normal working people than the vast majority of politicians.
He's not an ex-coal miner, though, is he? I mean, when you kind of say that you understand, when you say that Keir Starmer's never done a hard day's work in his life, that suggests that somehow you've worked sort of manual jobs, retail jobs. Clearly, he hasn't. He's
actually...
And a professional... I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about him. He's a professional politician.
Well, listen, I think there's a reason why in that polling this week, let's be frank, Keir Starmer is trailing Nigel Farage across the red wall by some margin because people can see the difference between the two.
Debs from Leicestershire, she's got in touch and said, Jonathan says that Keir Starmer should concentrate on things like fixing the NHS, but she says, if you want to fix the NHS, you have to tackle the numbers that are overwhelming the NHS, and you can only do that once, she says, you start focusing on and fixing the immigration into this country. Lots of you are getting in touch and saying that actually you think that the Labour focus on Nigel Farage and Reform UK is essentially helping Nigel Farage and Reform UK. I've got to say, I just found it so odd I don't know who is advising the Labour Party at the moment. I said this to you yesterday. You look at their Twitter feed, their X feed, almost like every other post or something is about Nigel Farage. And I think, why don't you just focus on getting your head down, delivering who you are and what you're doing? You've got your general election in 4 years.
But Michelle, there is another side to this story which we haven't covered,
What
which
is
is
it?
that Badenoch is crashing and burning her party, and that it's completely extraordinary and without precedent that you have one of the two governing parties of British politics that is now facing existential ruin.
Yeah, but the flip
just
side
so
to that,
soon after an election.
But the flip side to that, Jonathan, is it makes more electoral sense for Labour to maintain Kemi Badenoch and the Tories and hope that the two split and divide one another.
Well, that's
so
why he's not talking about her.
No, but that's what I'm saying. He's gone all in on Farage and reform.
Because he knows that's a threat.
Yes, but it makes more sense politically for him to maintain.
What's he supposed to do? Send her supported tweets? I mean,
I'm not here to advise I'm not here to advise Keir Starmer. But if I were, I'd be saying,
"Come on, Kelly, you're doing great."
No, I'd be saying you should not be turning Nigel Farage and reform into making them bigger in British politics.
As you yourself have acknowledged, he's not doing any of that. Reform is very much leading the polls, as you've identified. That's not Keir Starmer's doing or his will, but he is having to. He is having
that's
to.
Debatable. I think a lot of his decisions.
He is having to respond to that reality, and he's doing that in the way that he's deciding to do. But you know, he can't help the fact that Kemi Badenoch is such a dud, and the Conservatives are crashing and burning. And they would be, by the way, even if Jenrick was leading them.
I agree with that, actually. We agree. I agree with you on that.
There you go. That's nice, isn't it? We like all of that. Everyone getting on well. If only the country more broadly was like that. Look, imminently, you've got Donald Trump and Elon Musk going to take to the stage. We've all seen what's going on there. We're going to be quite interested, actually, to see what Elon Musk has got to say for himself. But I noticed last night, speaking of reform, Nigel Farage, he announced in Las Vegas what he called essentially a crypto revolution. Now you can donate via cryptocurrency to Reform UK. Also, as well, you're in a situation now where they want to create a different tax rate. So I think it's 10% capital gains tax for any gains that are made on cryptocurrency. And there were some other bits and bobs to it as well. Is this a step in the right direction, Matt Goodwin?
Well, I think obviously it's partly an attempt to riff on what Donald Trump has been doing in the US with American politics, trying to, reach out to the so-called tech bros and to show that basically he's ahead of what we might call the legacy established financial system. And the reality is there are lots of young people in Britain and other Western democracies, and I mean significant numbers, 30, 40%, who have investments in crypto, who are in the cryptocurrency world. And so for many people out there, it might look like a gimmick, it might look like something they struggle to relate to, but for younger voters, Nigel Farage, I mean, again, is the only person in frontline British politics really talking about an issue that the under 40s or the under 45s can relate to.
Jonathan?
Well, I think Donald Trump, of all people, put it quite well when he said that cryptocurrency is not money and it's used to fund all kinds of crime. He said that in 2019, so he's changed his mind somewhat since he's spied an opportunity to make billions of dollars off it. Look, I don't know enough about Bitcoin to be able to say that it shouldn't be permitted in any kind of political or public sphere. I don't have any crypto investments myself, but I know plenty of people who do, and who've, some of them have made quite a lot of money off it. I think that it needs to be better regulated, for sure. And the reason that Farage is doing this, obviously, is because he has seen what's happening across the Atlantic and he wants to imitate it in the way that he does with so many things. Obviously, there is, as a tax expert was saying, that if you do use Bitcoin to fund reform, you will have to pay you will have to pay capital gain on that.
What you're on about Dan Needham. You're on about Dan Needham, I think, and what he what he was pointing out is if someone buys crypto, and one of the challenges with crypto, and it's of course not just Bitcoin, is there is a substantial amount of volatility involved in cryptocurrency. Some people would argue there's also a substantial amount of manipulation involved in cryptocurrency as well. But the point that that tax expert was making was that if you want to make a donation to a political party, I don't know, let's just say you've got Bitcoin or Ethereum, whatever. So you've got that. Let's just say you bought it for £2,000 at the point of transfer to Reform UK. It would be worth £4,000. Then Dan was pointing out that you've essentially got a capital gains tax liability. And actually, I found this whole cryptocurrency thing very, very interesting. It's very, very innovative. I think one of the things that we've got to do in this country is try and hold on to and nurture entrepreneurial, tech-focused minds. Many people have this notion in society. It's almost like an envy or a dislike or a distrust towards people that are wealthy or aspirational or entrepreneurial when it comes to finance. I have completely the opposite viewpoint. I find people that are entrepreneurial, aspirational. I want to learn from them. I find them inspirational. It's those kind of people that I want going into the schools to talk to the young kids. All of these new technologies, I think we should be at the forefront of, and I think it's a very sensible policy. It's not without risk, it's not without volatility, and it's not going to be easy, but I think that Reform are blazing a trail in this, and it'll be interesting. I think it's a significant move in politics, and it'll be interesting to see who follows in which way and what that looks like.
But Michelle, I do think we have to be alive to what so many people in America are saying, not just people on the left, that when you have this new way of donating to political parties or to individuals, that comes with huge potential for corruption if there is no transparency about who is making the donation
there is transparency.
Such as Lord Ali as an example. I mean, you look at somebody like Lord Ali, who's been, donating left, right and centre to the Labour Party, buying power and influence.
Trump just had a major dinner a couple of days ago for people who'd invested a certain amount of money in his coin, which is usually, the coin, by the way, which is usually prefaced by a swear word, which is commonly used in the crypto world to denote something that has no value. So that is corruption right there. That is people who've invested, we don't know how much money, and they're hoping to get some kind of political favour as a result.
Hang on a second.
This is naked. Trump and Melania both made potentially billions of dollars on crypto since the election.
I can't take lectures from people on the left on donors and money. Every political party...
I'm talking about corruption, Matt. I'm not talking about...
How is it corruption? If they've earned money through crypto and they are choosing to donate to President Trump...
We don't know how much they're donating,
but we shouldn't be asking...
they're expecting favours in return.
But we shouldn't be asking questions about Keir Starmer having meetings with Larry Fink, Bill Gates, Lord Ali, the amount of dirty money Tony Blair has probably made over the years from corrupt regimes.
Tony Blair is no longer an MP.
But there's a view on the left that corruption or donations and so forth only actually matter when it comes to conservative movements, and it's absolute bananas.
It's just such bad faith nonsense.
It's bananas.
If you had Keir Starmer setting up an S* coin and asking people to fund him billions of pounds without any kind of transparency or sort of electoral role, etc. Right. But that would also be completely corrupt and ripe for corruption.
Now, I have just got to point out that Bitcoin, there is transparency. There's a public ledger in Bitcoin, so actually all transactions can be traced. And Zia Youssef, when he did some questions, Q&As about this morning, one of the things that he was talking about, he wants enhanced what they call KYC, so know your customer. It's all basically like security checks to simplify it. So he reckons that they're going to be doing extra over and above security checks. But you know what? When it's new technology like this, there's lots of things that has the potential to go wrong, and there's lots of the things that have the potential to innovate. I think it's potentially very interesting and exciting, but it does lead the question, are Reform UK just going to copy everything Donald Trump does?
Yeah, we've had abortion now. Literally, he's talking about abortion now.
Some issues will not transfer well from America. Others will. I mean, for example, Donald Trump's deportation policy. I think that's very important for Europe because a few years ago, people here were saying it's impossible to deport illegal migrants. Well, actually, Trump is doing it very successfully, and I think that those are areas where Reform could look at. Look at Trump's war on the universities that have enabled anti-Semitism. Trump is now saying we should withdraw taxpayer funding for universities that enable
by blowing up Harvard University, the foremost scientific research institution
that enable political... You asked me not to interrupt you. They have been enabling... And, Jonathan, let's be frank, since October the 7th, the elite universities have been enabling anti-Semitism on their campuses. So why should taxpayers be funding that? It's not.
It's not true.
It's literally documented. It's been out there. People can go and see it. So I think there are lots of things that reform could be taking from Trump, but some things won't translate.
What's your stance on what Farage said about abortion? Do you think he's onto something there?
I haven't seen the statement on it.
Well, when Farage said that 24 weeks was too high a limit.
No, hold on, because hold on a second. Let's be clear about what he said. What he said was that in the UK, the legal abortion rate is 24 weeks. What he then went on to say is since that was all established, premature children now in this country have a very high chance, or certainly a stronger chance now than they ever used to, of surviving life when they are prematurely born pre-24 weeks. So what he was saying is that given the advancements in medical technology, is there a question to be asked about whether or not 24 weeks is the right level? That's what he said.
Yeah, well, I think I characterised it quite accurately. He said 24 weeks was too high. Is this but Michelle, you know full well he would not be making this argument if he wasn't seeking to import another element of the culture war, which we have mercifully avoided in this country.
Can I...
But I tell you, if I was Nigel Farage and I was asked a question about abortion, he went down the rabbit hole of the term limits in 24 weeks. If someone was asking me, and I was Nigel Farage, that question about abortion, one of the things that I would be saying, with all the might that I could muster, is that I think it is categorically wrong in this country that a woman can terminate a pregnancy literally up until the moment she gives birth if that child has got, for example, Down syndrome or a cleft palate or some other what they would perceive to be a disability. I think that is so shameful. I think it's so wrong. If that mother gave birth to that child and then seconds later went, oh, look at my child, it's got a cleft lip, let me smother the child, that mother would be in prison. But yet legally in this country she can go off, trotting off, because the child has been screened to have a cleft, and kill the child literally whilst it's inside her to the moment she gives birth. Well, I think that is appalling.
Well, how often does that happen? I mean,
irrelevant.
That's irrelevant. I agree that that's. Look, I don't know the law behind that.
Well,
I know that there have been some egregious examples of very late terminations, which I think is wrong. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the limit for everybody.
Just to go back to the point about America, there is another area where I think Nigel Farage and reform will lean on the US, which will be reforming the state. Today we've had a new report from Policy Exchange, a think tank in Westminster, showing that you could save £5 billion a year by reducing and streamlining the civil service. We've had another report this week showing the police are spending £10 million on a year on diversity jobs, which would be enough for 300 new police officers. And we've had a GBNews report also showing that police authorities have been spending very large amounts of money on DEI initiatives. That is what I think reform will increasingly pull into UK politics, which is when people say, well, how are you going to raise money for this stuff? They will, I think, increasingly be saying, well, let's start looking at the state. Let's look at the 50 to 80 billion pounds that is going to fraud and waste, according to the National Audit Office. I mean, Michelle, think about that, 50 to 80 billion pounds in a year of waste and fraud of our taxpayers' money. And then people say, well, how can Nigel Farage afford 1.5 billion for winter fuel payments? That's where the debate is.
Every government since time immemorial has sought to clamp down on waste and fraud
let's do it
and
with a party
tax
from
evasion.
outside of the
Obviously, we have the
establishment.
Conservative Party that obviously spent, sort of spaffed how many billions up the wall on sort of the COVID loans, etc., the fraudulent COVID loans, and the government has made efforts to try and recoup some of that money and follow it up, etc. So clearly, that's always a problem. But it doesn't mean that we should go down the Doge route. The Doge route, which, by the way, is actually going to increase spending for the United States, hasn't cut spending at all, apart from completely shuttering the United States Aid Agency, which is going to lead, according to one estimate, 300,000 people.
Well, you cue that up nicely, by the way, because at any moment now, Elon Musk and Donald Trump will be talking, I imagine, very much about the Doge stuff, so we will wait to hear what they say. Rita says she's very much enjoyed the programme tonight. She thanks both of you two. Trevor says, maybe I'm being thick, but I don't even understand what Bitcoin is or how you go about getting your mitts on. Who will ever explain it? Trevor, there's loads of explanations online, but one thing I would tell you like this is all cryptocurrency Dewberry. Please believe me when I say this, it is incredibly volatile. So you must only ever, if you're thinking of having a little dabble, you must only ever dabble with things that you can afford
Treat
to
it like
lose.
a casino, because that's basically what it is.
Well, yeah, but you say that, but actually British banks, they restrict payments to crypto marketplaces, but not to casinos. I find that fascinating. Anyway, look, that's all I've got time for. I didn't even open Dewberry Tavern. Have a good weekend. I'll see you on Monday night.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. The weekend promises a mixed picture. Plenty of showers across northern and western parts and some gusty winds, but fine weather for much of East Anglia and southeast England. Will be turning fresher for all of us behind this cold front, but it's still way out in the Atlantic at this stage. Ahead of it today, we've seen 1 or 2 heavy showers, particularly over northeast Scotland, but they're now fading away. And for many, it's a fine evening out there, staying dry for many overnight, turning quite misty and murky around the coast of South Wales and southwest England, with a few showers creeping into West Wales and western Scotland later on. Pretty mild, it's pretty humid, temperatures holding up in the teens for many in towns and cities. On to Saturday, and as I said, a mixed picture. Much of eastern England starting fine and dry, but we will see some showers coming into Scotland. Generally here a dry start to the day, and it will be quite a mild start as well. But the rain is gathering, and that will be pushing its way into the west of Northern Ireland fairly smartly through the morning. We'll see some showery rain also arriving in West Wales, and as I said, quite murky around the coasts of Wales and southwest England. But warm and humid across these eastern parts of England. Hazy sunshine here lasting for most of the day. A few showers moving north across maybe the Lake District into southern Scotland, and then this band of wet weather will move across Northern Ireland around the middle part of the day and turn things quite wet and quite windy in western Scotland. Some heavy downpours, even the odd rumble of thunder, and some showers ahead of it too across parts of eastern Scotland and northeast England. A warm, humid feel for many. We could get temperatures into the mid-20s across eastern areas, but Sunday's much fresher. Cooler, less humid air moving in. Again, much of the south and east dry and bright with sunny spells. Showers further north and west with lots of showers coming into western Scotland. And look at those temperatures. We could get to 26, 27 tomorrow by Sunday, highs in the low 20s, and for many, mid to high teens.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could be our biggest winner yet, touring in this stylish Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. This brand new 2025 model comes complete with kitchen and bathroom areas and enough space to comfortably sleep a family of 4. We'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to add a few of your favourite things. Don't miss out as lines close on the 6th of June. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good evening. Let's take you straight to the White House now, where President Donald Trump is giving a news conference with Elon Musk.
Why don't we be, give credit where credit is due. Income really shooting up.
Rick, I also thought everybody was going to get one last order of imports that were going to be tariffed, and they were loading up on things. How the hell did they already fix the trade, or not fix it, but to cut it in half? That's crazy. So there wasn't a lot of front loading of things that they needed before the tariffs hit?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, it really does call into question some of the conventional wisdoms. And, it's going to be interesting to see what happens next month when we get this number, or we see some of the other numbers like current account, see how they fared. Because I don't know, I've been watching these numbers a long time. I don't think I've ever seen the trade deficit cut in half in 1 month.
Not bad. Right? Not bad.
Come on, guys.
I see Howard and Scott are here, so it's great. You guys want to stand over here? You might as well. You're the ones that help produce those numbers, and it'll only get better. The tariffs are so important, and that's why we were so happy with the decision yesterday where the tariffs continue, because without the tariffs, our nation would be imperiled. We would really be imperiled. I think I can say that with great surety, Scott and Howard. And so we were very happy to get that decision, that big decision yesterday. And today it's about a man named Elon, and he's one of the greatest business leaders and innovators the world has ever produced. He stepped forward to put his very great talents into the service of our nation, and we appreciate it. And I just want to say that Elon has worked tirelessly helping lead the most sweeping and consequential government reform program in generations. And you know the kinds of things that he's found and his people have found. He's brought a group of very smart people in, and they found things that are pretty unbelievable. I have to say that the numbers that we're talking about are substantial, but they're going to be very much more substantial with time, because many of the things that we're working on right now, we're going to have to remember Elon as we find them, but the numbers could double and triple because many things, we don't want to go out with them until we're sure, but we've found things that are unbelievably stupid and unbelievable.